Welcome to Fayette Footprints, a podcast about the people, places, and events that make up the fabric of Fayette County, Georgia. My name is Kenny Blum. I'm an almost lifelong resident of Fayette County, a bit of a history nerd, and now an amateur podcaster. Thank you for joining me today as we talk about the old Fayette County Courthouse. Back in episode 1, you already know that Fayette County was established in 1821, and 2 years later, in 1823, the state of Georgia mandated that all counties designate a county seat. For us, of course, it was Fayetteville. That county seat was supposed to be centrally located in the county to make it easy for all residents to get to the government buildings and the public buildings to conduct their business. About 2 years later, in 1825, the plans were developed to start construction on the courthouse. The bid actually went to the lowest bidder, a gentleman by the name of Finley G. Stewart, and for the low cost of $1,764, construction began. It took several years to complete the construction, and it wasn't done until 1831 when an additional $8,000 was needed to finish the construction project. I have a very interesting document that I want to read to you at the end of today's podcast because it's a little bit long, but it's a complete description on what the county wanted in their courthouse, and it's kind of interesting to listen to. So stick around to the end to get the whole drawn-out version of every little detail that the county was trying to establish in their new courthouse. A few years later, in the 1860s, a clock tower was constructed, and the two-story building only had a clock tower for about 50 years. It wasn't until 1909 that a clock was actually put into the top of the tower. The next big piece of construction didn't happen until about 1953 when the weights and pulleys that were used in the clock tower were taken out, and then from that point on, the clock was run by electricity. And then the next big event came up in the late 1960s when a third story was added because, of course, the county was growing and the courthouse was conducting more and more business. Then, in 1980, on September 18th, the courthouse, being the oldest operating courthouse still in the state of Georgia, was put on the National Registry of Historic Buildings. In 1982, arsonists took the chance at trying to burn down the courthouse. Now I'd like to introduce a guest to help tell the story of the burning of the Fayette County Courthouse. Jerry Barronton has been in Fayette County most of his life. In fact, he's a graduate of Fayette County High School and just recently celebrated their 60th reunion back in June with several other Fayette County residents who I hope to have on future podcasts. Jerry is a true Fayette County, and he loves Fayetteville. He has lived in Fayetteville city limits, and in fact, his decorations in his house even include a big old weathered placard that has a list of several different street names all around Fayette County, like Tyrone Road and Highway 54, and also several roads on which he's lived. But the reason that I've got him on today's podcast is because Jerry was the chairman of the Board of Commissioners from 1981 to 1984. Up next, Jerry shares his drafted notes on his recollections of that April night in 1982, and I've mixed in some of the recordings of our discussion, along with some points for clarification.
On Easter Sunday, April 11th, 1982, an arsonist firebomb burst the tranquility of Georgia's oldest courthouse and the seat of Fayette County government.
It wasn't long into the night when Jerry, serving as the Fayette County Board of Commissioners chairman, was called about the fire.
The sheriff notified me around 11:30 p.m. that I needed to come to the courthouse, and I could see the flames from that courthouse over the tops of trees in my subdivision rising up high. And I tell you what saved that courthouse, that's, from further more damage than what occurred, was if Clayton County had not come with their ladder truck, and they went up with that ladder truck and down onto the fire with water, and everybody else was shooting from the ground up, and they put that baby up in the air and went down, and that fire went out just like that, But we had Clayton County responded to us, Peachtree City came to us, Riverdale, they came down, Jonesboro, but we had a lot of, from surrounding areas, we had a lot of emergency equipment that came in there.
The fire was started by a man who was set to go to court the very next day on Monday. He set the fire in an attempt to destroy the records of his case. He also solicited an accomplice who he tried to stage as the lone arsonist. But thanks to alert residents, however, the two didn't get far.
And the two broke into the courthouse, went up to the courtroom on the third floor, and poured gas on the benches and flooring. It was believed that the arsonist intended to bomb the building, killing the local resident, and only his remains would be found. However, the local resident managed to escape the building as well. An eyewitness who saw the arsonist running from the building flagged down a car headed north on Highway 85, and the suspect got in the car and left the scene. The witness saw a deputy sheriff and told him he had seen someone running from the scene and entering a car headed north on 85 highway. Thank goodness they had a person that saw him and gave a good description. Even gave him the tag number of the car, and so it wasn't no. And when they got him, when they pulled him over, they didn't know whether the driver had something to do with it too. So they made both of them get out. And when the passenger got out, which was the guy, the arsonist, they got and looked on the seat. He done stuck his gun up on the seat.
While it was suspected that the arsonist intended to kill his accomplice as a scapegoat, and thought likely that he would have killed the driver who picked him up, he was found guilty of only the firebombing of the courthouse. Both men received 5-year sentences, and both only served 18 months.
Our community was fantastic in offering assistance in any way they could. Several nights later, we met with the Fayette County Historical Society. We met in the meeting room at Malier's Barbecue to discuss where we could go from here.
Looking back, you might think that rebuilding the courthouse was a foregone conclusion, but that is not the case. Of the 5 board members, 3 were initially not in favor of rebuilding. The courthouse had been in need of some maintenance repairs, and these 3 board members thought the building should have been demolished and replaced.
Once we as a board committed to restoring and not replacing the courthouse, a change occurred.
But there was one big problem. Money.
We were when we got started, we found out we were underinsured.
The insurance policy only covered about $500,000 for reconstruction, but the cost for completing the old courthouse would be almost $1.2 million.
The Historical Society worked diligently at raising funds to restore. The Historical Society had the slate pieces from the roof tiles. The society sold blue T-shirts with their oval on them for $5 to help raise funds. Each Saturday, society members were found on a corner of the courthouse grounds we were allowed to be on and sold these items, raising $27,000. Banks and other businesses sold slate from the roof of the courthouse along with bricks. And all of the black churches in Fayetteville came together at Edgefield Baptist Church one Sunday night in support of rebuilding and had a victory march in the church where each church representative made a sizable donation. The attempted burning of the oldest courthouse in Georgia was featured in a new national newspaper at that time, USA Today, which brought thousands of dollars in donations from folks who had traveled through here at one time or another. We got enough donations and everything in that we were still able to do the job with the insurance and the funds that we received. People gave money. I mean, I found there's a lot of people. A lot of Fayette Countyans have more emotional attachment to that building. Well, at that time, and some still. I still do today. I love that building today. But a lot of people back then, they had an attachment to that building, and they loved that building, and they didn't want to see it destroyed and replaced by some big marble building because that's the oldest courthouse in the state of Georgia. One may find it difficult to understand the compassion many have for historical sites. When this occurs, you demolish something that has stood the test of being a part of a community, and since we had all 4 walls still standing, with only the roof and bell tower gone, we committed we would do whatever it took to restore, not replace, that grand old building. I seen a community spirit like I had never witnessed as people came together, worked together, and accomplished the task of restoring that piece of history. Believe it or not, I even heard the harshest critics speak how proud they were we made the decision to restore and not demolish a piece of Georgia history.
And it was the oldest operating courthouse up until the new Judicial Center was constructed. Is that correct?
Right. Yeah. Then it was turned over. The Historical Society maintains most of it now. I cut my teeth in politics through all that. I mean, you know, when you're the president, it all falls to your lap first, and you know, and then you got to get the other four to vote with you or to go along with you to get something passed and done, and sometimes that is not easy at all to do.
You made mention that there was something done a couple of years earlier that probably saved that courthouse from burning to the ground.
Yes, they went in. And you know, it used to be two-story, and they went in and they raised it up some. And Mr. Earl Strother, he was the county engineer at that time, and he was a builder. And he had them go in there, and they put steel beams in there, and they put in they poured concrete floors. All the floors before the fire were wood, and they tore all the wood floors out, and they poured concrete floors between each level. You know, there was 3 levels. We had a basement, you had a first level, and then you had a second level. But there was concrete floors between all those floors, and he put them in. And I can remember he told us one day in a commission, he says, one day those floors will save the building, and it did. You know, it did, and because we had the most damage was on the 3rd floor, where they went up there, and that's where they put the gas out and everything. It does you good when you see a community rally around something like that, and I mean, it's more meaning than being just a historical building. It's, you know, it's part of a history, and it's the oldest courthouse in the state of Georgia. You know, and to say tear it down when you had perfectly 4 good walls still standing and a complete basement under it. Only thing we needed repaired was the roof and the cupola for the bell tower. We had people, Kenny, that come in that they gave their time, and like in Mr. Bud Ballard's office, the clerk of Superior Court, he had some shelves that he had books and everything down, and they were down just about to the floor. Well, when they were shooting water up above, and it's coming down through those floors and everything, under the doors and everything, we had senior adults volunteer to come in, and they come into his office, and they went through page by page of those books, and they put like wax paper between those pages to preserve those records. I mean, this was volunteers. They come in and worked 8 hours a day doing this that day. You know, I never witnessed anything like that in my life, where you just saw people come together and say, "What can we do? What can we do?"
While the Fayette County Courthouse was one of the oldest operating courthouses in Georgia up until the completion of the Justice Building in 2003, it is actually not the oldest courthouse still standing in the state. In fact, the old government house in Richmond County was completed in 1801, but that building was later turned into a residence, so it was not listed as the oldest operating courthouse. There's the Columbia County Courthouse that was completed in 1812, and also the Putnam County Courthouse, which was completed a year before Fayette County's in 1824. If you've ever been through Eatonton, it is a massive red brick building in the center of town. But the building is not done helping out Fayette County yet. It is still used as government offices, with the Chamber of Commerce and the Fayette County Development Authority still housed in the old courthouse. Thank you, Jerry, for taking the time to sit down and share your story with us. And also a big thanks to anyone who has served in local politics, whether an HOA or all the way up to the state and federal level. It's very difficult to try to appease a majority of people and still respect those who have a minority opinion. Before we step off onto the description of the courthouse as it was going to be constructed, I want to invite you to come out to the courthouse. You can actually come to the lower north side entrance, and there's a museum down there. It's got some sporadic hours because it is manned by volunteers, and hey, if you really like it, maybe you could volunteer to come also. And in addition, there's going to be a huge birthday celebration on the courthouse square on November 15th, celebrating 200 years of the old Fayette County Courthouse. I sure hope to see you there. And now, a complete description on how the courthouse was to be constructed from our forefathers. As promised, this is the very detailed description of what the planners wanted in their courthouse. This is what was presented to those who were willing to make a bid on the construction project. On April 26, 1825, the plans were drawn up for a permanent courthouse. Quote, "The foundation shall be laid with smooth stone, 1 foot under the surface of the earth, 2 feet and 1/2 wide, and raised inches above the surface of the size of which shall be 40 square feet. The body of the house shall be of smooth, well-burnt brick of the best clay the county will afford, built upon said foundation, and raised a sufficient height, 2 brick and 1/2 thick, to allow room enough for a foundation foot story below and a 10-foot story above stairs, leaving 3 doors below, 4 feet wide and 10 feet high, with the arch one in the center of the south wall and one in the center of the east and west walls arched above, and 9 windows below 8 feet high and 3 wide, or as near that size as possible to make the glass fit. 3 on the back of the judge's seat on the north side, then 1 on each side of the doors. 12 windows above stairs, 6 feet high by 2.5 feet wide, 4 on the north and 4 on the south side, and 2 on the east and 2 on the west sides. This wall shall be covered with good heart pine shingles, the roof having the ordinary pitch of such buildings, and raised in the form of a square, thatched, with the rafters resting on each side of the house, on the top of which shall be a cupola of the common size for such buildings, having a wooden ball covered with gold leaf 18 inches in diameter at the usual distance above the top of the cupola. The roof of the cupola and house shall be painted red, and the body of the cupola white. The door shutters shall be double, that is to open on each side of the door of the description, and shall be painted a mahogany color, and the facings and casings white. The windows shall be painted on the facings casings green, which windows shall be filled in the common manner with glass not less than 8 by 10 inches. The outside of the wall shall be painted with lime, and the outside and inside row of brick shall be laid in lime mortar. The wall of the understory shall be plastered, whitewashed, or made white, as is usual in what is termed plastering. The lower floor shall be laid with tile, the upper floor with good pine planks of the common thickness tongue and groove and dressed. The judge's seat to be raised on the north wall, as high as the bottom of the windows banistered on front on top, of which must be broad enough 10 feet long to ride upon, and a seat as long next to the wall, and a short pair of stairs at each end on each side, of which must be fixed 2 seats for juries. The back one rising above the other high enough for those on the back to see over the heads of those in front with convenience. The bar shall be a seat raised upon the floor for a convenience height to set upon, back of which shall be raised from the floor and continued as church pews as convenience height to lean against when seated, and back of that a prisoner's vault 3 feet by 2 wide in front of the bar, leaning in the center, or door 2 feet wide, 3 feet of railing or banisters, with bound at the judge's seat within 1 foot of the eastern and western doors. At each shall commence a pair of stairs running straight and as steep as convenient to the second story, which 2 pair of stairs shall be banistered and run north or back towards the judge's seat, all of which wood work, together with a post to be in the center to support the joists, shall be painted green. Whew! That was a mouthful. Very descriptive, and yes, there are a few grammatical errors in that, which made for an interesting read and probably kind of an interesting listen. But it does give a little bit of a glimpse into how much planning was put into the design of the courthouse. So we can thank these old planners for the courthouse building that we still have today, as the bottom 2 floors are virtually the same as they were during construction. More information about the Fayette County Courthouse can be found in the book, The History of Fayette County. It is available at several of the different libraries around the county, as well as at the Fayette County Historical Society, just off the square in downtown Fayetteville. There's also a museum under the courthouse that you are welcome to go and check out, but it does have some odd hours as it is manned by volunteers. And I want to thank you for listening to another edition of Fayette Footprints. This podcast and more can be found at fayettefootprints.buzzsprout.com. You can also search for it in your favorite podcatcher. Tune in next month as we jump into another story on some of the people, places, and events of Fayette County.